Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Matt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Notes to My Legal Self. I'm really excited to have this conversation. It is with someone I knew for a long time. She's an inspiration and a role model for many, myself including. She's a dear friend and a woman of a lot of achievement and leadership. I'm really excited to have this conversation. Flavia, without further ado, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Olga. It's so wonderful to be here. You are a dear friend, and it's so good to have this conversation. So, folks, my name is Flavia Naves. I have been a lawyer for over 20 years. I'm originally from Brazil, and I moved to the United States in 1999. I was most recently the general counsel of Circle, which is a company in the digital assets industry. And I'm currently now doing a couple of different things in my career, doing some consulting, and I'm doing some teaching. So I'm just very excited to be here with Olga and sharing some tips with you guys about pursuing your career in the United States.
I love it. That is such an important conversation. A lot of folks approach me with that conversation. I actually don't have a whole lot to add because I grew up in the United States. My name is Olga, and I do have a slight accent, but I went to high school, college, and law school here. So I do not qualify really to give advice here, but you are, and I'm glad to have this conversation. I also love that you're a fellow in-house lawyer and a fellow former general counsel. So you have a perspective like nobody else. And you're a woman in tech. And it is an industry that is full of opportunities and pressures that I think you can share and inspire folks to aim higher. So before we go into substance of our conversation, I would like to situate in your experiences and what you have done and how you got to serving what you're doing today and being a former general counsel. What jobs, what are the stops along the way? How did you get to be where you are today?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm originally from Brazil. So as with many lawyers that are foreign trained, that our path to law school is we go to high school, we finish, and then we go to law school directly, right? Most countries do not have an entry into college, then you go to law school like in the United States. And so you go to law school in Brazil, it's for 5 years, and you get out of law school with an LLB, so a bachelor's in law. During my studies in Brazil, I did several internships in different organizations. And then my last internship was at a law firm where I was at when I graduated. The law firm did broad practice, and I was in their international transactions team. Brazil at that time was going to the deprivatization of public utilities. And I was working with several companies that wanted to enter the market in Brazil to provide energy, water, different types of public utilities. With that, fluency in English and obviously knowledge of doing business internationally was very critical. So I sought to come to the United States to further my legal studies and be barred in this country so that I'll be able to best service my clients back in Brazil. So that's how I came to the U.S. I came back to the United States in 1999, as I said, and I started my studies in 2000.
I love that. So let's talk about Brazil. This year was a great year. I had an opportunity to go to many places, including Brazil. I spent a few weeks in Brazil this year, completely unsupervised without my family, meeting up with my friends, giving some talks, exploring the country, the best way to travel. And it's a beautiful country. And I've met a lot of lawyers. What I know for a fact is that it's a country full of lawyers. It has a high per capita number of lawyers. It has a fairly complicated legal system. It's an important democracy. It's an important ally to the United States. And it believes more or less in the rule of law, which makes it a very important country. So tell me more about Why did you end up going to law school? And what was your focus in Brazil when you were studying law?
Yeah, so when I went to law school in Brazil, I wanted to do something focused on international relations. I had lived in the United States in the early 90s as an exchange student. I lived with a host family in northeastern Pennsylvania in a small town called Hazleton, which is just outside of Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. Has 35,000 people, coal mining country. But being here in the U.S. and having the exposure to just the culture here, I really wanted to focus on international transactions. So when I went back to law school in Brazil, that was my focus. That was in corporate law with a focus on international transactions. So that my last year in law school, I really focused on that side of corporate law and started interning at the law firm that I was at to be able to pursue that type of path.
I love that. Those exchange opportunities are really mind-blowing. When I was younger, my dad had an assignment in Germany, and I had an opportunity to live in Germany for a little while. Not very long, but it was long enough for me to understand the language, not speak it, be exposed to something else, and really imagine what life could be. I, of course, did not imagine that I would have to speak English and move to the United States, which is the reason why I studied German in school. But it does expand your mind, and I really love those international adventures to this day. I can't stop. So you decided to go to law school in Pennsylvania. Why Pennsylvania?
Again, I wanted to be close to my host family, right? I was coming to the United States by myself. I was concerned about, should something happen to me, be in a car accident or something like this, right? I needed to be someone close by to be able to help me. My entire family would be back in Brazil and I would be here by myself. So I would have had opportunities that many law students do to go to New York or come to California or Florida. But I chose a place that I could be close to my host family so I would have the support that I needed. I also found that different law schools have different criteria for admission of foreign trained attorneys. And in looking around at the different law schools, I found Widener University in Harrisburg to be a very welcoming community for me and someone that was willing to add me to their student body and help me pursue my studies in the US.
So what was it like? What was it like my adventure to the United States was that of my dad packing bags and say, get in, let's go. Yours was actually on your own volition. So what was the what did live up to your expectation, and what was it maybe disappointing or not exactly what you expected?
Yeah, so the interesting thing, to say the least, it has been a very rewarding experience from the beginning. I really enjoy my time at Widener. I still keep in touch with my corporate law professor to this day. She's wonderful. I had nothing but good things to say about my time at the law school studying. The one thing that was surprising to me when I got to this country is how the bars here are different, because in Brazil, you have a national bar. You get barred in the different states of the state that you live in, but the bar is nationwide, meaning you can take your bar from one state and go to the other and practice. You don't have to take another bar exam. In the United States, unless your state has reciprocity, then you have to. So I was really surprised when I came here and I thought that I would sit for a certain bar and that would be okay nationwide. And then you figure out that it wasn't, and that the states in which, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Washington, D.C., they all had different requirements and different treatments for foreign trained attorneys. So that was very surprising and a bit disappointing, something that I had to figure out how to work with to find my path.
Yeah, the 50 nations under one God.
Right? Exactly.
That part is mind-blowing at some point, especially when you don't grow up here. Yeah, completely with you. So you decided to take the United States bar. Where did you take it?
So I took it in Washington, D.C. And the reason for that is, again, I was really focused on international transactions. People could think, oh, New York will be a better jurisdiction for you. I'm not a New York person. Let's put it this way. I think it's too much for me as an
Wait, you don't like being chased?
It's a bit too much energy, right? C provided that international forum, obviously for being the capital of the country and obviously the center of all consulates, embassies, and everything else, all policies being done in DC. So I thought that it would be a really good way for me to continuing that path of international transactions, international relations, and being in a jurisdiction that was more fitting to my personality. So
yeah, DC is a cool town. It's artificially young. There's a lot of folks from different jurisdictions in the United States and other countries. I spent some time in DC. I thoroughly enjoyed this scene. Definitely very political, not quite fast-paced, but fast-paced enough. So it has a lot of cool things. But it's really interesting. I'm gonna pause for a second because you went to the United States and law school to do more business with Brazil.
yes.
And I'm not sure if that means you actually had plans to return or you had no plans to return. You discovered reasons to stay. But at some point, I think in your mind, you had a pivot. And I'm curious, how did that conversation with yourself go?
Yes. So, as with everything in life, they throw you monkey wrenches and you have to figure out how to work with them. So, I was in law school minding my own business. And then I meet this very good looking gentleman in my class. And we start dating. And here still I am. So,
Amazing how it's always about the boy.
things happen and you have to go with the flow. Flexibility, as I tell every single LLM student, is really important. And I had to be flexible with that, right? So for me, it was my entire family was still back in Brazil and I'm here. So I had to really understand if this is something that I want for the rest of my life. Is this where I'm going to live when I'm going to raise my children? Where I'm going to leave my ashes at the end of the day? Is this the place for me? So at that time, I really had to make a decision. And especially at the early stages of my career, being a young lawyer, not only in my profession, but also in my life as a younger person, I had to really couple with these thoughts and be like, is this really what I want to do? Is this what I want to be? And there were times in which I doubted myself. And I had to think again. Whenever I found a hardship, I was like, maybe I should just pack up and go back to Brazil. But that's when I persevered and stayed because I'm like, no, I'm going to pursue this and I'm going to continue towards what I want to do.
I find that sometimes closing option B makes you go forward with option A more full force. Meaning, if you thought of it as an equal opportunity to go back, you might have not worked so hard. But when you have the love of your life here and you actually have to make it work here, that's a different story. I know in my experience, closing option B, either by my own volition or because it actually been forced or I chose to do this, have been very instrumental. What do you think?
No, I agree. Because again, you're going to be presenting a life with many routes, right? You're going to get to a fork where sometimes you'll have two paths or three or four or five, and you're going to have to pick one, right? And with that one, maybe you go down the road and there's a dead end, and you're going to have to figure out how to get out of that dead end. So it's always is you're going to have to pick a path. You're going to have to march towards that and figure out how you pivot if something goes the right way. But the wrong way. But it's I do believe that have been presented with that with that situation in front of me, I had to make a decision, and I haven't regretted it.
Yeah, you were doing it for love.
Yeah.
So that's a big goal. That's a big audacious goal. You've chosen, I believe, clerk.
Yes, I did.
Which is unusual for an LLM student. You made that decision. I'm curious how you went through that process. And, that decision, it has financial implication and probably biases implication. Two things, right? It prolongs your childhood for a year, meaning you make less money. And that's a big economic decision. And depending where you come from, that may or may not be a big decision. And I believe there is a bias in the clerkship system towards certain schools, American born, all kinds of things. And so you had to work with that. So I'm curious how you made that decision and how was that applying for clerkships adventure was?
Yeah, so that came out of nowhere. So as with many law students, I get out of law school thinking, okay, I'm going to go to a law firm because that's what everyone is supposed to do. That's what they tell you. That's what you do. So I started applying to law firms in the DC area that have a focus with Brazil in trade. And I thought that this would be a really good path for me. And I started getting rejections letters one after the other, right? One after the other. So about 3 months go by and a friend of mine from law school who had been in the JD track and had graduated a year before me, reaches out to me and says, Flavia, I'm clerking for this judge in Pennsylvania, and he needs a new clerk. I'm about done, and I'm gonna leave. Would you be interested? And I said, Jason, litigation? Really? That is
like, seriously?
I am not that type of person. I'm not a litigator. I'm a transactional attorney, right? But I said, you know what? I'm not going to close that door. I'm going to leave it open to try and be flexible. So I go and I meet the judge. He's the president judge of the York County Court of Common Pleas in Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania. And our personalities immediately clicked. It wasn't anything about the work or anything else. I thought that he was a very good human being, and he thought the same thing of me. And I would think, I was like, you really want me to work for you? Like, I'm a foreign trained attorney. I did all these things. I'm not the cookie cutter, to your point, right? And he said, no, I want to hire you. Do you want the job? And I took the job. And to this day, I still talk to him. He remains a source of mentorship for me, amazing person. And it was definitely challenging financially because law clerks don't get paid a lot. But I would say that really boosted my career in the US and the recognition from other employers, because they were like, okay, even though you don't fit the mold of what a US lawyer should look like, meaning college and law school here, you are bona fide by this judge who gave you this clerkship. So having his stamp of approval was something that definitely helped me push me into new opportunities in the US once I left my clerkship.
Really cool. No, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting choice. At some point, you ended up in California.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So I clerked for my judge. My term was 2 years. It was a 2-year commitment. So when I was a year and a half into it, I told him, I said, listen, I want to go in-house. I don't want to go into a law firm. I'm getting several opportunities from law firms. I don't want to work in a law firm. I want to work in-house. Obviously, in-house jobs take a little bit longer. So I want to make sure that what do I need to do? And he said, Flavia, I don't want to lose you. You stay here as long as you need to get the right job. You shouldn't rush out of here and get a job because there's something here. So I stayed with him for another 10 months post my term. So I was with him for 2 years and 10 months until I started my corporate counsel role following that. I was with that company. That was the company that I went to, was called Susquehanna Falls-Graf. So it was a very stable, privately owned, family-owned business in Pennsylvania that has started doing pottery, and then they pivoted into radio stations, cable TV, software development. They did all sorts of things, even real estate development. And I was with them for 8 months, and the company was sold. Okay. Everything was sold.
Wow, it sounds like a portfolio company with lots of cool experiences. Yes. And wow, that was a long clerkship. That actually was a meaningful clerkship for over 2 years. So you said you wanted to be in-house. You didn't want to go to a law firm. I may ask you why, but to me that answer is self-evident, but I'll let you articulate it. I'll ask you maybe a layer deeper question of how did you make that conclusion at your job as a clerk? How did you make that decision that a law firm is not a right place for you? That took me about 4 years to reach that conclusion on the job. And I consider myself a fairly smart person.
So when I was in law school, I interned here in the US. I interned through my career development office in 2 different places. One was a law firm in Harrisburg, and the other one was a corporation, Tyco Electronics. When I was at Tyco, I worked and helped them with a myriad of things. And by seeing the experience that I had in Brazil at my law firm, and then the law firm here, and then my experience at the corporation, I said, that's what I want to do. But I also knew that going in-house would have been harder originally for me. I had this perception that it would be harder initially for me if I hadn't been vetted by another employer in the United States. Somehow someone gave me an opportunity. But I knew the mindset that you use to work in-house is very different than the mindset that you use to work in a law firm, as you may know. Law firms, I feel like I'm surrounded by lawyers. In corporations, I'm surrounded by business individuals. They all speak different languages, meaning marketing language, product language, finance language, and I speak the lingual language. So I thought that having all those folks bringing different ideas and different perspectives to me actually made me a much better lawyer than just sitting with my fellow attorneys and having them speak to me in legal terms.
Oh, I love it. You're surrounded by business people speaking different languages. Oh, that is so beautiful. That is really cool. I love the way you think about it. That is absolutely true. It captures exactly that analogy. So you had your first job in-house at a portfolio company doing all kinds of stuff, post clerkship. How did that go? And obviously going through the acquisition, that's a milestone event that is life-changing for company, employees, and probably you. How did it change your perspective and from the point of view as an LLM student, kind of what you want to continue doing as you're growing up as a lawyer?
It just really solidified the fact that I wanted to be an in-house counsel. And also having that exposure also painted the idea of what it is that I want to do. So that's when I really set my North Star of my goal is to be the general counsel of a public traded company. So that's when I picked and I said, okay, that's where I'm going to get. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but that's the place that I want to be. Right. I had exposure to so many different issues. Every day was something different. And it really teased my brain that I wasn't just a lawyer, right? I was a legal business partner. I was there in the business to support the business to grow. And the gift that I was bringing to the company was my legal knowledge. Instead of just sitting there and producing memos and doing legal analysis, I was trying to look how I could help that business grow in a compliant manner. That really just got me very energized. And I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my legal career. And the role that I want to have is the GC role. How I'm going to get there, I'm going to stay open to it, but that's where I'm going to get.
I love it. So post-acquisition, is that when you went to California, or did you have a few more adventures on the East Coast before you discovered the Candyland?
No, because when I was at that company in Pennsylvania, I was supporting their software development and cable TV. And once the company was sold, I was chatting with some of the executives that were also departing, and they said, Flavia, if you really want to continue in this area, South Central Pennsylvania is really not the place for you, right? A lot of things happening here. Right? You need to pack up your bags and move to California. This is 2005. And I was like, okay, I think that makes sense.
And the question is, did the sad boy that we discussed earlier, did he follow?
So he unfortunately didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, he unfortunately didn't. But I did find another boy here. And years later, we're still together. But yeah, but that
when in doubt, upgrade the boy. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So that's when we pivoted many things, right? Job included. But then I came to California in 2005, and that was when I started re-engaging and coming to a new state. I had to start from the beginning all over again.
I love that. So did you take the California bar?
I had to. So when I got, because obviously I love taking bar exams, right? This is the third one now, because I took mine in Brazil, then in DC, and now here. So when I got to California,
you are practically a recreational
right?
bar taker.
I should just have like shares on Barbary if it is a public company. But anyways, I came in 2005, and I was again thinking maybe I can do something with my DC bar and everything. So for the first year, I worked doing contract work and work as a registrar in-house counsel because California already had that rule. But it found it very limiting in the opportunities that I could take, right? Because every time that you register as in-house counsel is just for that organization. It doesn't allow you to really move around with that. And this is at the very beginning of this program with the California Bar. The registrar in-house counsel rule had not existed for very long. So employers were still not really sure what to do with it. So I said, I don't want to add even another thing to make my resume more different than everyone else, right? I'm trying to minimize the differences to make my resume more palatable to US employers. So having this just adds more complexity. So what I'm going to do is take the bar exam. So California, once you have practiced law in another jurisdiction for 5 years or more, you're considered an attorney and you can take an attorney bar exam, which means that you don't do the multi-state. You just do the essay, the written portion. But again, it had been 5 years. So I'm like, I don't remember anything about criminal law, torts, evidence, and this is intentional. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go.
This is intentional.
Right. So I'm going to go do Barbary again because I had to. These things are all going to get tested in the bar exam. In 2001, in the summer, I took bar review again, and I took the bar in July of 2001.
Wow.
2006. Sorry, 2006. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely think having a conversation with your prospective employer, how I can help you on the day one, which is tomorrow, is definitely the quickest way to close that conversation and actually start being gainfully employed. You talk a lot about your niche in-house. And a lot of LLM students, again, guided toward me because I guess I sound and come across as worldly or foreign enough that this is where they are directed to. I am of not nearly as much help as you are, but there is a lot of hopelessness in this conversations. This conversation often highlights to me the biases. They find out very quickly that I went to the American law school and therefore not in the same sort of category and therefore may not have a transferable or helpful experiences for them. And many of them give up fairly quickly and go back to the option B. You seem to have a different point of view that it is, yes, it's possible. There is a way to do it. There is a path. That path is one, persevering, and two, niching down. I want to understand, I'm sure you get a lot of folks directed to your way on this conversation, and I'm sure you're much more helpful. What is your system that you developed? We have identified a few things. One is that do what's expected. Do a clerkship. Sit for the bar. Make it easy to say yes. What else? What else do you recommend doing?
What I tell everyone is find what differentiates you from anyone else. Because most of the US trained law students have gone to college, then law school, and then they go to a law firm or something like that, right? Many of them do that. And when they go to a law firm, because they may not have an expertise unless their undergrad, for example, was sciences, so they may end up in the IP department of a law firm or something like that. But most of them may just fall into the general pool and be put in there. You have something different that they don't have. And what is it? For example, for me was the fact that I spoke Portuguese and I was born in Brazil. So what I was looking for are companies in the United States that do business in Brazil or in Latin America, and they need a foreign trained attorney that can actually help them do business in the two continents, not just in North America, but also in South America. So how is it that I could leverage that to expand? Earlier today, I was talking to another lawyer who is from the Dominican Republic, and he has cybersecurity training. I said, your differentiator is not that you speak Spanish, because there are several lawyers that do that. You have a cybersecurity training. That's what you're going to use that most lawyers don't have. So we have to look in your background. Is it a cultural? Is it a linguistic? Is it a training that you have that many or no other attorneys in your region would have? And you use that as your tool to find your path, right? That is going to be the beginning of your career. And after that, it's not anymore. I was talking to someone last week who mentioned to me, Flavia, I forgot that you are foreign trained attorney, because that doesn't matter today anymore. I've been here practicing law for over 23 years. That doesn't matter anymore. But in the beginning, it did. It mattered a lot. And the reason how I found to break myself and find myself relevant and as that differentiator was, what is it that I have that very few people or no one has, and how can I use that to further my career?
I love that. Take yourself out of the generic pool and put yourself in a niche pool, which is somewhat a counterintuitive advice, because we think that niching out really reduces your opportunity, but it reduces your opportunity by increases your qualifications in it. So it makes you much more likely to be a fit. Interestingly enough, that's advice you give to a startup when you build. Do not build a generic product that solves everybody's problem. Solve somebody's small problem and then expand out, which is what you did. I love that. Any other advice? Any other thoughts of what else you could do now that you have been doing this for 23 years successfully and pivoted not only from being a Brazilian lawyer, Pennsylvania lawyer, California lawyer, technology lawyer, like you've done quite a few pivots in this thing called law. What are other things to help you be on that journey of LLM student and become the square peg that goes into the square hole?
Be flexible. Be very flexible, right? Your career is not going to be linear. And it's not, it is, and I don't even think it is for JD students most of the time, but for LLM students even more, right? You're not going to go from here to here. It's not going to be that path. If you want that path, it's going to be very hard for you to be able to succeed. You need to be flexible and let opportunities come your way, but always assessing how is it that opportunity can get you to that North Star. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to be the general counsel of a company. So what is it that I'm learning from these other jobs that I'm taking that are helping me build the skill set and the relationships to make me the general counsel of a company in the future? And I pivoted to a point, Olga, I work in technology, then I worked in entertainment, television, I worked in music, I ended up going to payments, then I did money transmission, and then I did digital assets. And all of these industries taught me something to get me to the jobs that I was, and I was building the relationships throughout the way. So I would say, be flexible, be open. When you want to get to a certain point, there's just not one road to get there. There's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different roads. Be open to take different roads to get to your destination, because that will give you many more opportunities to pursue, and actually things that you would never anticipate being really rewarding, such as my clerkship, that will get you to where you want to get. So be open-minded, be flexible, and set your goal at the North Star and figure out how to get there, but just don't find one path, find different paths.
So we're coming to the end. I have a few more questions, and I want to talk a little bit more about networking and how that really played a role. I don't remember exactly how we met. I do remember we both were working. I was working on Market Street in San Francisco, and we had a few walks. I was general counsel at the time, but I believe we met well before that, and we had many conversations about what it means to be a general counsel, how to lead your team, how to lead the organization through various milestones, how to be impactful when you sound foreign, when your name is Olga or Flavia, and folks never seen that before, how to be compelling and effective. I'm curious how you think of networking as part of that formula for success. What role did it play? And how do you systematically network with people that help you propel you forward?
Yeah. So how we met is because I was looking for a mentor to train me how to be a general counsel. And you were one, and I had heard from many people how wonderful you were. And I sent you a request on LinkedIn, and you very kindly accepted my request. And that was, 8, 9 years ago? And here we are. But networking is hard. Many attorneys don't like to do business development, right? We don't like to toot our own horn. We don't like to promote us, especially women also feel very self-conscious about that, right? So I had to get over all of these things and say, unless I'm tooting my own horn, unless I'm driving my own career, no one is going to do that for me. So that's when I started looking for opportunities to network. I joined every single organization that was available to me at that time. I joined the ABA, the ACC, the Association of Corporate Counsel, and I started going to events and introducing myself to people. I will walk to someone who was grabbing coffee and say, grab coffee nearby, and introduce myself and start talking and meet that person and connect with that person on LinkedIn. And that person is now a resource for me to meet somebody else. Right? You really build your own network and you build your career. It's like you're building a business. You're building your brand. So I started doing all of that networking. And then towards the latter part of my career, this was very broad in the beginning. In the latter part of my career, as I started being more and more focused on certain industries, like when I became very focused on fintech, right? Then I started looking at networks that were targeted at fintech attorneys that would even continue to push me in that direction. But in the beginning, because I was open again to get to my North Star through different roads, I was really networking with everyone that I could in every single industry to be able to give me a path. And I was really just reaching out to people and going to conferences and talking to people. If my employer wouldn't pay me to go to a conference, sometimes I will go myself. I would just, because I saw that as an investment in my career, and I was willing to invest that money on me. So I did all of these things to be able to build my network and to get out there. And networking is extremely important. If that's what I have to say. Yeah.
What is your network effectively?
So it's just not getting a name and walking away from it and getting a LinkedIn connection and you walk away, right? You have to keep those connections warm. You give and you get, right? It's not just expecting people to help you, it's making yourself available to help people. To this day, when people reach out to me and they're asking for something, I'm able to help. And then when I go to someone to ask for something, my first question is, how can I help you back? How can I give back the help that you gave me? Right? So networking, it is as important as keeping those relationships warm as it is to making sure that you just don't ask for things, but you're open to give things back. And in the beginning of a career, obviously more limited in what you can give back because you're still growing your network and the ability to do, but make yourself available. Know to the person that is helping you that you're available to help them back as they need, because it may be 5-10 years down the road, you still have that relationship and that's your time to pay back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have many relationships that I've been building for the last few decades. It took them a while to mature.
Yeah.
And sometimes people need to see you in action for years, decades, to really build trust, to see your commitment, to see what you're made of, to actually have a fit in terms of what you can offer to each other. But yeah, I a lot of folks reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you're a lawyer on LinkedIn, there is a really good chance. I don't connect with everyone, but I do connect with almost every lawyer in the United States jurisdiction and beyond, because I do think that for a legal audience specifically, I can add quite a lot of value and we can have a long, prosperous relationship. And I'm very much like yourself, long-term oriented in that give and get dance, and that I try to have with as many folks as I can, because it does have a compound effect. That's
Yes,
what I found,
absolutely.
and a very massive compound effect, and that supports you through all kinds of pivots. Do you have a thought on networking with folks outside of law?
Yes, because again, in-house, even more so, is really important, right? Because as I said earlier, the invoice counsel is really just listening to all these different voices that are not just legal voices, right? So networking with folks in the financial industry, right? I have several relationships with folks in the big fours, CFOs, accountants, treasurers, controllers. These people are really important in your career. Most of the companies that I worked at, I was very close to their finance team or to their product team. So I now work outside as well with engineers, product development people, right? These are all the folks that when an opportunity is available in their company, they're going to think of you. How many jobs I've gotten because the head of sales or the head of product has worked with me or knows of me from somebody else and has put in my name for a position in the company. They said, you should hire Flavia. So this is how you network, and these opportunities in-house will appear is by people that actually are considered what they call the builders of the company, which is usually product, marketing, this for engineering. They will put your name forward and people will listen and say, okay, this is actually someone we want as part of our team.
Yeah, I love that tip. We are at the end, unfortunately. You and I can talk for a long time about all kinds of things.
Yes.
Didn't even get into Web3, where we probably have quite a lot of commonalities. But let's just leave it at that, because I think this was a great, deep conversation. Flavia, you have a wealth of experiences in law and life just generally. And what is one thing you want folks to take away from this conversation? If you are pursuing your first job or your next job with your LLM and you have profound conversations about being a foreign lawyer, what is one thing you want folks to take away from this conversation to make sure that they can build a successful, prosperous career in the United States?
Yeah, I think the one thing that is most important for everyone to think about and have always in your mind is that you are the only person in charge of your career. Don't let anyone else tell you what you can and cannot do. I don't know how many times I hear LLM students telling me, oh, a partner in a law firm told me that I would never get a job. Or someone said this, someone said that. I actually had one of my Barbary instructors in DC tell me that I will probably not pass the bar exam because it's very difficult for foreign trained attorneys to pass the bar exam. Don't listen to them. Only you can dictate your career and where you want it to go. Persevere, be flexible, and go towards your North Star to achieve your goals. And don't listen to the naysayers. There will be many naysayers out of there, and don't listen to them. It is very hard, but it's not impossible, because if it were impossible, I wouldn't be here. So think about that.
And if not impossible, it's a question of strategy. Flavia, thank you so much. You've given some wonderful tips and strategies. And I love that you emphasize that other people are too little too generous with transferring their limiting beliefs. And you should be very careful before you accept them, whether or not you trained in the United States or anywhere else, whether you're a lawyer or some other professional. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.